This is Houston. Right now. 2025. The most sprawling city in America. 665 square miles. Larger than New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago combined. 7 million people spread across an area the size of a small state. The average Houstonian drives 14,000 miles annually. That's halfway around the earth. Every single year. Just to live here. Houston doesn't have a transportation problem. Houston is a transportation problem. No zoning laws. That's Houston's defining characteristic. Want to build a nightclub next to a church, next to a chemical plant? Go ahead. Houston has no zoning. The result? Chaotic development. Strip malls everywhere. No walkable neighborhoods. No public transit worth using. 91% of commutes happen by car. Houston worships the automobile. And the automobile is killing Houston. Climate change threatens Houston existentially. Hurricane Harvey in 2017 caused $125 billion in damage. 51 inches of rain in 4 days. The city drowned. Hurricane frequency increasing. Sea level rising. Storm surge predictions show downtown Houston underwater by 2060 without intervention. The city that sprawled across a swamp is slowly sinking back into it. Nature reclaiming what humans temporarily borrowed. The energy industry dominates everything. Oil and gas built Houston, made it rich, and made it vulnerable. When oil prices crashed in 2014, Houston's economy collapsed. Then, again in 2020. Boom and bust. Prosperity and poverty. Houston's fortune tied entirely to fossil fuel prices. Energy capital of America. Also energy prisoner of America. Unable to diversify because oil money crowds out everything else. Heat makes Houston nearly uninhabitable summer months. Average temperature July through September, 95 degrees Fahrenheit with 85% humidity. Heat index regularly exceeds 115 degrees. Outdoor activity becomes dangerous. Children can't play outside during summer days. Workers collapse from heat exhaustion. Air conditioning isn't comfort. It's survival. And it's expensive. Energy bills average $400 monthly in summer. Poverty means suffering heat. Literally. This is Houston today. Sprawling. Flooded. Oil-dependent. Uninhabitably hot. The city built by petrochemicals facing obsolescence as world transitions away from fossil fuels. But 60 years from now, Houston becomes something unexpected. The space tourism capital. The gateway to orbit, where thousands launch weekly to space hotels, lunar resorts, and Mars colonies. Houston's expertise launching oil from ground becomes expertise launching humans to stars. Space City becomes reality. Finally, the transformation began in 2037 with an oil crash. Prices dropped to $18 per barrel. Houston's economy imploded. Again. But this time, Mayor Linda Chen, former NASA engineer, proposed radical diversification. The Houston Space Initiative. Convert oil and gas expertise to space industry. Petroleum engineers become rocket engineers. Offshore platform workers become orbital station builders. Chemical processing becomes rocket fuel production. Use existing skills. Different industry. SpaceX led the charge. Elon Musk announced Houston as SpaceX's third major spaceport in 2038. Why Houston? Expertise. Thousands of petroleum engineers could retrain for rocket engineering within months. Chemical plants could produce rocket fuel. Construction workers who built oil rigs could build launch facilities. Houston had infrastructure, had talent, just needed different application. Musk bet $5 billion on Houston's pivot. Historic investment. NASA expanded Johnson Space Center dramatically. The federal government invested $32 billion between 2038 and 2050. Not charity. Strategic investment. China and India were dominating commercial space. America needed to compete. Houston's oil infrastructure and aerospace legacy made it obvious choice. The Space Force established its headquarters at Ellington Field in 2041. Houston became America's space capital. Officially, the Petroleum Aerospace Retraining Institute opened in 2039. Free 6-month program converting oil workers to space workers. Drilling engineers learned orbital mechanics. Refinery operators learned rocket fuel chemistry. Offshore welders learned spacecraft construction. 53,000 workers retrained in first 5 years. Success rate, 84%. The skills transferred. Different application. Same expertise. Houston's workforce didn't disappear. It launched. The first commercial space hotel, Orbital Vista, launched in 2046. Built in Houston. Launched from Houston. Operated by Houston Company. 50 guests paying $200,000 each for 5-day orbital stay. Booked solid for 3 years. Space tourism wasn't science fiction. It was business. And business was booming. Houston built the hotel modules using converted oil rig technology. Same pressure vessels. Different pressure. Different altitude. Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and 12 startup space companies established headquarters in Houston by 2050. Why? Talent pool. Launch facilities. Supply chain. Support infrastructure. Houston became to space what Detroit was to automobiles. The manufacturing and launching center. By 2055, space industry employed 137,000 Houstonians. More than oil ever employed at peak. Houston's economy diversified. Finally, the environmental benefits surprised everyone. Rocket fuel production, yes, but hydrogen-based. Clean burning. The old refineries converted to produce liquid hydrogen and oxygen. No carbon emissions. Air quality improved dramatically as oil refining ceased. Houston's infamous brown haze cleared. By 2060, Houston's air quality ranked among best in Texas. Space industry proved cleaner than oil industry. Counterintuitive. But measured. Documented. Real. Population stabilized then grew. 7.1 million in 2035. 7.8 million by 2050. 9.3 million by 2085. Houston became destination again. Space workers migrated from around world. Engineers from India. Scientists from Europe. Entrepreneurs from China. Houston's diversity exploded. Space industry attracted global talent. The sprawling oil city became cosmopolitan space metropolis. Different economy. Different culture. Different identity. Space City stopped being nickname. Became reality. Welcome to Houston 2085. The space tourism capital of Earth. 9.3 million residents. 14 active spaceports. 233 weekly launches to orbit. 37 weekly flights to lunar resorts. 6 monthly missions to Mars colonies. Houston launches more mass to space than rest of Earth combined. This isn't NASA's Houston anymore. It's everyone's gateway to the cosmos. The city built on oil now runs on rocket fuel. And business is literally out of this world. The spaceports themselves transformed Houston's geography. Ellington Spaceport handles commercial tourism. Johnson Spaceport manages government and military launches. Baytown Spaceport serves cargo and freight. Katy Spaceport focuses on lunar flights. Each specialized. Each massive. Launch pads visible from downtown Houston. Rockets launching become as routine as airplanes taking off. Houstonians don't even look up anymore. Just another Tuesday. Another 100 people heading to orbit. Space tourism democratized. $200,000 for orbital stay in 2046. $32,000 in 2085. Competition drove prices down. Technology improved efficiency. 16 major space hotel companies compete. Orbital Vista. Cosmos Palace. Zero-G Resort. Lunar Gateway. Each offering different experiences. Luxury suites with Earth views. Budget bunks for students. Space honeymoons. Orbital retirement communities. Space tourism isn't for billionaires. It's middle-class vacation. The spacecraft evolved dramatically. Early tourism used modified cargo vessels. Cramped. Uncomfortable. By 2085, dedicated passenger spacecraft rival commercial aircraft in comfort. The Starliner 5 carries 300 passengers. Reclining seats. Panoramic windows. In-flight meals. 2-hour flight to orbital hotels. Return trip next morning. Same day, there and back trips for $38,000. Space day trips. Weekend orbital getaways. Space became accessible. Routine. Normal. Lunar tourism exploded after permanent moon base opened in 2072. Luna City houses 18,000 permanent residents, but hosts 200,000 tourists annually. 1-week lunar vacations. Low-gravity recreation. Earthrise viewing. Lunar surface excursions. Houston to Moon? 12-hour flight. Longer than Houston to Australia, but infinitely more exotic. Lunar tourism employs 43,000 Houstonians. Booking agents. Flight crews. Hotel staff. Ground support. The Moon economy runs through Houston. Mars colonization launches exclusively from Houston. Every Mars mission, every supply run, every colonist transport. Houston to Mars. 6 months, one way. Uncomfortable. Expensive. But necessary. Mars colony depends on Houston. 12,000 people live on Mars in 2085. All launched from Houston. The city that put humans on Moon now puts humans on Mars. Permanently. Houston doesn't just enable space tourism. It enables space settlement. The space industry transformed Houston's economy completely. Space tourism. Spacecraft manufacturing. Rocket fuel production. Launch services. Satellite operations. Space mining support. Asteroid prospecting. Every space-related industry clusters in Houston. The aerospace supply chain extends throughout Texas. Component manufacturers in Dallas. Software developers in Austin. Training facilities in San Antonio. But Houston remains center. The hub. The capital. Space city literally. Housing evolved around spaceport access. Proximity to launch facilities became premium real estate. Neighborhoods market themselves on commute time to spaceports. 10 minutes to Ellington Spaceport. Real estate ads scream. Space workers want short commutes like everyone else. But their workplace is Launchpad. Housing prices near spaceports rival beachfront properties. View of rockets launching? Add $50,000 to home value. Space access became real estate amenity. Transportation infrastructure adapted to space industry. High-speed rail connects downtown to all 14 spaceports. No more driving. Electric trains every 8 minutes. 20-minute maximum commute anywhere to anywhere. Houston finally built public transit. Not for environmental reasons. For business efficiency. Getting workers to spaceports quickly mattered economically. Profit motivated what sustainability couldn't. Houston's transit system became excellent. Accidentally. Climate adaptation happened alongside space development. The flood control system completed in 2067 protects downtown from Category 5 hurricanes. Massive surge barriers. Elevated development. Permeable surfaces everywhere. Water management became world-class. Not choice. Necessity. Can't have spaceports flooding. Federal government funded $53 billion in flood protection. Space infrastructure too valuable to lose. Houston adapted to climate. Because space operations demanded it. Economic imperative solved environmental problem. Education transformed completely. Every Houston public school includes aerospace curriculum. Elementary, students learn basic orbital mechanics. Middle schoolers study rocket propulsion. High schoolers intern at space companies. University of Houston's aerospace engineering program became top-ranked nationally. Rice University focuses entirely on space sciences. Texas A&M trains astronauts. Houston's educational system serves space industry. The pipeline from classroom to launch pad became seamless. Cultural identity shifted dramatically. Houston's always called itself Space City. Now it's literal truth. Local sports teams renamed. Houston Rockets actually launched rockets. Houston Astros sponsored asteroid mining. Space theme pervades everything. Restaurants named after planets. Bars themed as orbital stations. Even churches incorporate space metaphors. Reaching for heaven takes literal meaning when congregants work in space industry. Culture reflects economy. Houston's culture became cosmic. The sprawl problem partially solved itself. People concentrated near spaceports for job access. Downtown revitalized as space industry headquarters located there. Light rail made car ownership optional. Not eliminated. Houston's still car-friendly, but no longer car mandatory. 73% of commutes still happen by car, down from 91%. Progress, not solution. Houston remains sprawling, just less desperately so. The space industry created some density, some walkability, some transit. Better. Not good, but better. Air quality became excellent. Hydrogen fuel production emits water vapor. Rocket launches produce brief emissions, but dissipate quickly. Oil refining ceased entirely by 2065. Last refinery converted to hydrogen production in 2067. Historic moment. Houston's air, poisoned for a century by petrochemicals, became clean. Children with asthma rates dropped 74%. The brown haze disappeared. Houston's sky turned blue. Literally, measurably, photographically documented. Space industry cleaned Houston's air. Unexpected benefit. Heat remained Houston's challenge. Still hot. Still humid. But space industry adapted. Launch facilities climate-controlled. Underground tunnels connect major buildings. Workers move between air-conditioned spaces without exposure. Not solving heat. Managing it. Avoiding it. Houston didn't conquer climate. It engineered around climate. Indoor city within outdoor city. Summer became survivable. Not comfortable, but survivable. Progress counts. Houston 2085 isn't the Houston of 2025. Different economy. Different identity. Different future. Oil capital became space capital. Sprawling car city became transit-accessible launch city. Pollution capital became clean air showcase. Not perfect transformation, but profound transformation. Houston proved that cities can pivot, can reinvent, can launch themselves toward different futures. Literally and figuratively. From petroleum to propulsion. From ground to galaxy. From earthbound to cosmic. Let's follow a typical resident. Meet Sofia Rodriguez, 32 years old, third-generation Houstonian. Her grandfather worked oil rigs. Her mother was petroleum engineer during the crashes. Sofia? She's a launch coordinator at Blue Origin's Houston Spaceport. Same industry routes. Different altitude. She coordinates 12 weekly tourist launches to Orbital Vista Space Hotel. Her job? Get 360 passengers to orbit safely. Every week. No pressure. Literally. Well, lots of pressure. Just managed differently. Her commute? High-speed rail to Ellington Spaceport. 18 minutes, door to pad. She boards at Midtown Station. Trains packed with space workers, engineers, flight crews, maintenance techs, ground support, everyone heading to spaceports across Houston. The morning commute looks like any city, except conversation topics involve orbital mechanics and lunar trajectories. Coffee shops near station sell rocket fuel lattes. Space work normalized completely. Ellington Spaceport operates 24/7. Sophia's shift? 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. She coordinates morning launches. Her workspace overlooks launch pads. 5 rockets visible from her desk. Today's launches: 2 tourist flights to Orbital Vista, 1 cargo run to Lunar Gateway, 1 satellite deployment, 1 Mars supply mission. Busy Wednesday. She sips coffee and reviews checklists. 300 passengers trusting her expertise. Another day at the office. The office happens to launch people into space. Her salary? $93,000 annually. Her grandfather made $68,000 in inflation-adjusted dollars working oil rigs. Dangerous work. Physical labor. Sophia earns more for safer, cleaner, more interesting work. She owns a townhome in Clear Lake, 15 minutes from Spaceport. $270,000 purchase. Her mortgage? $1,400 monthly. 18% of income. Space industry wages support middle-class life. Like oil once did. But sustainable. Not boom-bust. Steady. Launch days are intense but routine. Sophia monitors weather. Confirms passenger manifests. Coordinates ground crews. Communicates with flight crews. Tracks fuel loading. Manages timeline. At 0900 hours, Starliner 3 launches with 150 tourists aboard. Perfect launch. Sophia watches from control room. Still gets chills. Every launch. 300 annually. Still amazing. The routine miracle. Humans launching to orbit. Her job made that possible. Pride swells. Then, next checklist. 2 more launches today. Lunch happens at Spaceport Cafeteria. Not fancy, but views are spectacular. Launch pads visible. Rockets coming and going. Sophia eats with flight crews just returned from orbit. They share stories. Passenger reactions. Zero gravity mishaps. Stunning Earth views. Sophia lives vicariously. She coordinates launches but hasn't launched herself. Yet. Blue Origin employees get free orbital trip after 5 years. She's at year 4. Counting down. Next year, she flies. She can hardly wait. After work, Sophia teaches youth astronomy at Community Center. Houston kids grow up watching rockets. But understanding astronomy matters too. Sophia shows them constellations. Explains orbital mechanics. Demonstrates rocket physics. 15 kids attend weekly. Diverse backgrounds. All space-obsessed. Sophia remembers being that kid. Watching shuttle launches with her mother. Now she launches tourists. And trains next generation. The cycle continues. Houston space culture perpetuates itself. Dinner is with her partner Marcus, a spacecraft engineer at SpaceX. They met at University of Houston. Both aerospace engineering majors. They cook together, discussing their days. Sophia's launches. Marcus's design challenges. Their entire relationship centers around space. Conversation would bore most people. To them, fascinating. Shared passion. Shared career. Shared future. They're saving for lunar honeymoon. $28,000. Expensive. But once in lifetime. Or once in relationship. They'll marry on moon. Because they're Houston. Because they can. Evening entertainment happens at Observation Deck at Space Center Houston. Public viewing area. Free admission. Dozens of Houstonians gather nightly watching launches. Sunset launches, particularly beautiful. Rockets ascending into twilight. Contrails catching last sunlight. Spectacular. Free show. Sophia and Marcus join neighbors. Everyone watching together. Applauding successful launches. Groaning at scrubs. Community bonding over shared sky. Houston's evening entertainment became cosmic. Literally watching humans leave Earth. Regularly. Routinely. Magnificently. They return home through safe, clean neighborhoods. Sophia remembers her mother's stories about oil industry crashes. Fear. Uncertainty. Layoffs. Her grandfather's dangerous rig work. Injuries. Deaths. Sophia's job? Safer. Cleaner. More stable. Space tourism grows steadily. No crashes. No busts. Sustainable industry. Her children, someday, will work in space too. Maybe on Moon. Maybe Mars. Maybe asteroids. Space industry created generational opportunity. Like oil once promised. But delivered. Before bed, Sophia checks tomorrow's schedule. 3 cargo launches. 1 tourist flight. 1 Mars mission. She reviews weather forecasts. Orbital trajectories. Passenger manifests. Her work launches 360 people to space weekly. 18,720 annually. Her grandfather launched oil from ground. Sophia launches humans to stars. Same Houston. Different industry. Different dreams. Same pride. Same prosperity. Different altitude. Much higher. This is daily life in space tourism capital. Not for billionaires. For launch coordinators and spacecraft engineers. For third-generation Houstonians whose grandparents worked oil. They didn't escape Houston. Houston transformed around them, elevated them, launched them into careers launching others into space. The city built on petroleum became city built on propulsion. Different fuel. Same prosperity. Same pride. Cosmic altitude. Health outcomes prove transformation success. Air quality improvement reduced asthma rates 74%. Life expectancy increased 6 years between 2050 and 2085. Heat-related deaths dropped despite continued heat. Climate-controlled infrastructure protected residents. Access to space created psychological benefits. Purpose, pride, wonder. Mental health metrics improved across all categories. When people work launching humans to stars, depression rates decline. Cosmic perspective helps, literally and psychologically. Educational outcomes followed economic transformation. High school graduation rate, 93%. College enrollment, 79% in aerospace fields. But also vocational training. Spacecraft technicians don't need degrees. Need skills. Multiple pathways to space industry. College. Technical school. Apprenticeships. Houston built comprehensive pipeline from any starting point to space career. Education aligned completely with economy. Students learned what industry needed. Industry hired what education produced. Seamless integration. How does space tourism actually work? Let's dive deep. The passenger experience begins months before launch. Medical screening, training, zero-gravity preparation. Customers attend 2-day orientation at Space Center Houston. Learn safety protocols. Practice emergency procedures. Experience simulator flights. Not optional. Required. Space tourism democratized. But safety maintained. Every passenger trains. No exceptions. Even billionaires. Especially billionaires. They're most likely to panic. Launch day arrives. Passengers check in 4 hours before flight. Security screening like airports. But stricter. Weight limits enforced precisely. Every kilogram costs fuel. Passengers weigh with luggage. Overweight? Pay surcharge or leave items. No exceptions. Commercial space flight operates on physics. Not negotiation. Weight matters. Passengers accept restrictions. They're going to space. Worth it. Completely worth it. The spacecraft, Starliner 5. 300 passengers. 3 crew. Automated flight. Crew handles emergencies and passenger comfort. Not piloting. AI flies. Perfect precision. Human judgment handles unexpected situations. Passengers board via airbridge. Like commercial aircraft. Seats comfortable. Legroom adequate. Windows large. Panoramic views. 2-hour ascent to Orbital Hotel. Gradual acceleration. Comfortable. Not violent. Space tourism requires customer satisfaction. Industry learned from airlines. Comfort matters. Launch sequence begins. Engines ignite. Rumbling. Vibration. Acceleration presses passengers into seats. 3GS. Uncomfortable but tolerable. Train for this. 2 minutes to staging. Booster separation. Smoother. Orbital insertion burn. 8 minutes total. Engines cut. Silence. Weightlessness. Gasps throughout cabin. First time 0G magical. Terrifying. Exhilarating. Windows show Earth curving below. Thin blue atmosphere. Black space above. 300 people experiencing overview effect simultaneously. Transformation. Perspective shift. Life-changing. Docking at Orbital Vista takes 30 minutes. Automated. Precise. Passengers watch through windows. Space Hotel massive. Rotating wheel design. Centrifugal gravity in outer ring. 0G in central hub. 500 guest rooms. Restaurants. Observation lounges. Gym. Pool. Yes, pool in space. Water in rotating ring stays in pool. Physics works. Engineering succeeds. Luxury hotel. Just happens to orbit Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. 5-day stay standard package. Day 1. Orientation and adjustment to 0G. Day 2. Earth observation. Day 3. Spacewalk experience. Tethered, supervised, unforgettable. Day 4. Recreational activities. Day 5. Departure preparation. Cost? $32,000, all-inclusive. Meals. Activities. Spacewalk. Everything. Middle-class family saves 2 years. Affordable dream. Not cheap, but achievable. Space tourism democratized not by making it cheap, by making it worth saving for. Hotel staff, 120 employees. Living in space, 6-month rotations. Housekeeping in 0G. Cooking in 0G. Customer service in 0G. Everything harder. Everything fascinating. Staff earn $130,000, 6-month contract. Tax-free. Space work pays premium. Competition fierce. 10,000 apply annually. 120 selected. Working in space hotel became aspirational career. Hospitality industry reached orbit. Literally. Safety record. Remarkable. 12 years of operations. 233,000 passengers. 0 fatalities. 3 minor injuries. Better safety record than airlines. Why? Engineering. Redundancy. Training. AI monitoring. Every system triple-backed. Every procedure tested exhaustively. Space tourism can't afford accidents. One major disaster kills industry. Companies know this. Safety obsession results. Space tourism became safest form of tourism. Statistically, measurably, provably. Economic impact on Houston, massive. Space tourism generates $87 billion annually. Launch services, hotel operations, spacecraft manufacturing, training, insurance, support services, medical, retail. Every space dollar circulates through Houston economy. Multiplier effect, 4.2. Every dollar spent on space tourism generates 420 in total economic activity. Space tourism didn't just employ people. It enriched entire city. Houston learned from oil mistakes. Diversified within space. Multiple companies. Multiple destinations. Sustainable prosperity. Environmental impact. Surprisingly positive. Rocket launches produce emissions. But hydrogen-oxygen combustion creates water vapor. Dissipates rapidly. Carbon footprint per passenger. Similar to transatlantic flight. But experience incomparable. Critics argue space tourism frivolous. Supporters counter. Exploration drives innovation. Satellites launched alongside tourists enable climate monitoring. GPS communications. Scientific research. Space tourism funds space infrastructure benefiting everyone. Mixed environmental impact. Not perfect. Not terrible. Nuanced. Competition drove innovation. 16 space hotel companies compete. Each differentiates. Luxury suites. Budget bunks. Adventure experiences. Romantic packages. Family-friendly. Adults only. Themed environments. Competition benefits consumers. Prices dropped. Quality increased. Innovation accelerated. Capitalism in orbit. Market forces working. Space tourism industry matured from novelty to commodity. From exclusive to accessible. From special to routine. But still magical. Physics don't care about familiarity. Weightlessness amazes everyone. Always. Future expansion planned. Lunar hotels under construction. Mars tourism by 2095. Asteroid mining tours. Saturn observation stations. Space tourism expanding throughout solar system. Houston remains launch hub. Every mission, every tourist, every expansion launches from Houston. The city that pivoted from petroleum to propulsion became permanent gateway to cosmos. Space tourism didn't peak, just began. Houston's space century just started. Next stop, everywhere. But Houston's transformation isn't perfect. Challenges persist. Economic inequality increased. Space industry pays well. Service industry doesn't. Hotel workers serving space tourists? $42,000 annually. Launch coordinators? $93,000. Engineers? $130,000. Two-tier economy emerged. Space workers prosperous. Everyone else struggling. Space tourism created wealth. Didn't distribute it equally. Houston's Gini coefficient increased despite overall prosperity. Rich got richer faster than poor got richer. Housing affordability crisis persisted. Space workers could afford homes. Median price $360,000. But service workers priced out. Gentrification accelerated. Historic neighborhoods transformed. Communities displaced. Not by oil crashes, by space booms. Prosperity pushed people out as effectively as poverty. Different mechanism. Same pain. Houston's growth benefited newcomers more than longtime residents. Generational Houstonians became casualties of success. The sprawl persisted. Yes, transit improved. Yes, some density increased. But Houston remained fundamentally car-dependent. Suburban expansion continued. New developments built around spaceports. Same sprawl pattern. Different anchor. Houston grew outward while reaching upward. 665 square miles in 2025. 840 square miles in 2085. Space industry didn't fix sprawl. Relocated it. Different geography. Same problem. Houston's DNA remained sprawling. Heat remained brutal. Climate control in buildings and tunnels helped. But outdoor Houston still deadly hot summer months. Climate change worsened temperatures. Average summer highs increased 3 degrees between 2025 and 2085. Heat index regularly exceeds 120 degrees. Outdoor workers suffer. Construction crews, landscapers, delivery drivers. Class divide visible in heat exposure. Wealthy stay air-conditioned. Poor endure heat. Environmental injustice persists. Different from oil pollution. Still injustice. Hurricane vulnerability didn't disappear. Flood protection improved downtown and spaceports. But suburbs remained vulnerable. Category 4 hurricane in 2079 caused $80 billion damage to residential areas. Federal flood protection prioritized space infrastructure. Wealthy neighborhoods. Poor neighborhoods flooded. Again, class and geography determine disaster survival. Space industry protected. Residential areas sacrificed. Economics trumped equality. Infrastructure investments follow money. Always have. Still do. Economic dependence remained problematic. Houston replaced oil dependence with space dependence. 81% of economy tied to space tourism and aerospace. What if space tourism declines? Recession in space industry collapses Houston. Again, different industry. Same vulnerability. Houston learned from oil boom bust. Built in redundancy within space sector. Multiple companies. Multiple destinations. But still single industry. Diversification within monoculture isn't diversification. It's risk management. Better than nothing. Not enough. Cultural displacement affected longtime residents. Houston's identity shifted from oil city to space city. But what about people who weren't space workers? Their Houston disappeared. Historic Latino neighborhoods gentrified. African American communities displaced. Working class culture erased by professional class space culture. Progress for some meant loss for others. Cultural memory replaced by cosmic ambition. Not everyone wanted to be Space City. Some wanted to be home. Their home. The one that disappeared. Space debris increased orbital pollution. Thousands of launches annually create debris. Collisions with satellites. Defunct spacecraft. Launch vehicle stages. Space around Earth becoming crowded. Cluttered. Dangerous. Kessler syndrome threat. Cascading collisions making orbit unusable. Space tourism created problem for future generations. Orbital pollution, invisible from ground. But measured. Documented. Growing. Houston launched prosperity into space. Also launched garbage. Environmental cost deferred. Not eliminated. Youth employment challenges emerged. Not every teenager wants aerospace career. Arts, humanities, social services, non-STEM fields suffered. Schools prioritized aerospace. Funding followed space industry. Students interested in literature, history, social work, told careers don't exist. Subtle pressure toward space. Economic coercion disguised as opportunity. Houston created prosperity through single pathway. Limited options while expanding some opportunities. Paradox causing frustration. Resentment. Quiet rebellion. Houston 2085 isn't utopia. It's improved. Dramatically improved economically. Better air quality. More jobs. Higher wages. Space tourism created prosperity, but also inequality, displacement, vulnerability, new problems replacing old problems. Houston solved oil dependence, created space dependence. Progress, not perfection. Better, not best. Transformation benefited many, not all. Sometimes that's reality. Uncomfortable, honest, real. Houston space tourism model spread globally. Florida expanded Kennedy Space Center for tourism. California built spaceports at Vandenberg and Mojave. Texas built second spaceport in West Texas. Internationally, UAE opened Dubai Spaceport. Japan launched from Tanegashima. India from Sriharikota. China from Hainan. Every space-capable nation built tourism infrastructure. Houston proved market existed. Others captured share. Competition intensified. Houston pioneered. Others profited. First mover advantage limited in space tourism. Federal policy followed Houston's success. The Commercial Space Tourism Act of 2062 standardized regulations, safety requirements, training protocols, environmental standards, insurance mandates. Houston's practices became federal law. Industry opposed regulations initially, feared limitations. Discovered regulations enabled trust. Customers felt safer. Bookings increased. Regulation grew market. Counterintuitive, but measured, documented. Policy learning from Houston's experience. Government following private sector innovation. Then standardizing success. International organizations studied Houston intensely. United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs based case studies on Houston model. International Space Station partners examined commercial partnerships. European Space Agency studied workforce transition from oil to space. Houston became classroom for global space industry. Not just launching tourists. Teaching world how to build space tourism economies. Knowledge export matched hardware export. Houston's expertise became valuable commodity. Consulting, training, technology transfer. Space tourism created educational industry. Academic programs proliferated worldwide. MIT established Space Tourism Management Program. Stanford created Orbital Hospitality degree. University of Houston's program became model. Students globally studied Houston's transformation. Business schools taught from petroleum to propulsion case study. Engineering schools analyzed workforce retraining. Houston's pivot became required curriculum. The city that reinvented itself taught others how to reinvent. Educational legacy extending beyond physical infrastructure. The petroleum industry adopted Houston's playbook. Oil companies globally diversified into space. Shell built spacecraft fuel division. BP invested in orbital hotels. ExxonMobil created space logistics company. Fossil fuel giants saw writing on wall. Climate pressure mounting. Renewable energy threatening. Space provided transition pathway. Houston proved oil expertise transferred to space. Petroleum engineers became rocket engineers. Chemical plants became fuel production facilities. Industry transformation possible. Houston demonstrated how. Oil industry followed reluctantly, then aggressively. Cultural movements emerged celebrating space exploration. Literature exploring cosmic tourism. Music genres incorporating space themes. Art installations featuring orbital perspectives. Houston's transformation inspired creative expression globally. Space tourism democratized cosmic experience. Artists responded. Overview effect became cultural phenomenon, not just astronaut experience. Mainstream cultural reference. Space tourism made cosmic perspective accessible. Culture reflected that accessibility. Houston enabled cultural transformation beyond economics. Political power shifted towards space-focused regions. Texas elected president in 2076. First time since LBJ. Space states gained congressional representation. Federal space budget increased 400% between 2050 and 2080. Washington listened to Houston. Because Houston proved space tourism economically viable, politically valuable, strategically important. Space capital gained political capital. Power followed prosperity. Houston's economic success translated to political influence. Regional revival through cosmic ambition. Economic data proved transformation's value. Houston GDP grew from $500 billion 2025 to $2.3 trillion 2085. Adjusted for inflation, 143% real growth. Unemployment dropped from 7% to 2.8%. Poverty rate declined from 19% to 11%. Still too high, but improved. Measurably. Documented. Space tourism didn't solve everything, but solved enough. Economic statistics don't lie. Houston prospered. Imperfectly. Significantly. Undeniably. Environmental movements adopted mixed positions. Some celebrated clean hydrogen replacing oil. Others criticized space tourism carbon footprint. Space debris concerns mounted. Orbital pollution debates intensified. Houston became focal point. Environmental symbol. Complicated. Not villain. Not hero. Example of trade-offs. Clean air locally. Orbital pollution globally. Reduced carbon versus increased launches. Environmental ledger mixed. Debatable. Honest assessment required nuance. Houston provided that nuance. Willingly or not. Houston's greatest export wasn't rockets or tourists. It was proof. Proof that cities can reinvent. That economic transformation possible. That dying industries can birth new ones. That workforce retraining works. That sustainable prosperity achievable. Oil cities worldwide looked to Houston and saw pathway forward. From fossil fuels to future industries. Houston didn't just save itself. It showed others how to save themselves. Through transformation. Through pivot. Through refusing to accept decline as destiny. Inspiration worth more than any export. So what does Houston teach us? First, existing expertise can transfer. Petroleum engineers became rocket engineers. Offshore workers became orbital station builders. Chemical plants became fuel production. Skills matter more than industry. Houston didn't abandon expertise. Redirected it. Same capabilities. Different application. Cities with specialized knowledge can pivot that knowledge. Not start over. Transform. Houston proved expertise portable across industries, if designed thoughtfully. Second, crisis creates opportunity. Oil crash 2037 devastated Houston. Also freed Houston. Forced radical thinking. Enabled transformation. Without crisis, Houston would have clung to oil. Prosperity prevents change. Poverty enables it. Uncomfortable truth. But truth. Sometimes cities must break before rebuilding differently. Houston's oil crash was Houston's space launch. Crisis as catalyst. Painful. Necessary. Transformative. Third, federal investment multiplies private investment. $32 billion federal dollars attracted $150 billion private investment. Government de-risks. Private sector profits. Partnership works. Neither alone succeeds. Together, transformation. Houston proved public-private space partnership effective. Federal money created foundation. Private innovation built economy. Synergy. Not competition. Collaboration. Model for future urban transformations. Government enables. Private sector executes. Together prosper. Fourth, democratization drives markets. Space tourism for billionaires? Small market. Space tourism for middle class? Massive market. Houston succeeded by making space accessible. Not cheap. Achievable. $32,000 expensive. But savable. Market expansion requires accessibility. Luxury alone insufficient. Volume requires affordability. Houston proved space tourism viable by democratizing it. Lesson applies beyond space. Accessibility creates markets. Exclusivity limits them. Fifth, environmental improvement requires economic alignment. Houston's air quality improved not from regulation, from economic transition. Hydrogen fuel profitable, therefore adopted. Clean air beneficial, but profit motivated. Environmentalists uncomfortable with market-based solutions, but effective. Houston proved environmental improvement and economic prosperity compatible. When economics align with environment, not always, but sometimes, pragmatic environmentalism works. Houston demonstrated how. Sixth, sprawl persists without deliberate policy. Houston improved transit, but sprawl continued. Economic transformation insufficient. Urban form requires planning, regulation, zoning. Houston feared those tools. Sprawl persisted. Lesson: economic success doesn't automatically fix urban problems. Requires intentional urban policy. Houston succeeded economically, failed spatially. Partial transformation. Economic, not geographic. Cities need both. Houston achieved one. Teaches importance of other. Seventh, inequality persists through transformation. Space workers prospered. Service workers struggled. Economic growth doesn't guarantee equality. Requires distribution mechanisms. Progressive taxation. Wage standards. Social services. Houston created prosperity. Distributed it unequally. Economic success. Social failure. Partial. Transformation lifted many. Not all. Lesson: prosperity requires intentional distribution. Markets create wealth. Don't distribute it. Policy must. Houston forgot that lesson. Inequality resulted. Eighth, single industry dependence remains risky. Houston replaced oil with space. Different industry. Same vulnerability. What if space tourism declines? Houston collapses. Again, true diversification requires multiple independent industries. Houston diversified within space. Insufficient. Lesson partially learned. Full lesson. Diversify across sectors. Not within sector. Houston's future depends on space. Risky. Better than oil. Still risky. Diversification harder than it sounds. Ninth, cultural displacement accompanies economic transformation. Long-time residents lost their Houston. New Houston served newcomers. Space workers. Tourists. Not generational Houstonians. Cultural memory erased. Communities scattered. Progress for some meant loss for others. Transformation has human costs. Economic statistics miss. Social metrics capture. Houston prospered economically, but culturally? Mixed. Complicated. Painful for many. Economic success doesn't heal cultural wounds. Sometimes creates them. 10th, cosmic perspective changes everything. Overview effect isn't metaphor. It's documented psychological phenomenon. Seeing Earth from space transforms worldview. Houston democratized that experience. Hundreds of thousands experienced overview effect. Changed priorities. Environmental awareness increased. Nationalism declined. Cosmic perspective creates environmental citizens. Houston's greatest contribution? Not economy, not technology. Perspective. Making cosmic consciousness accessible. That might save humanity more than any economic transformation ever could. Asterisk, Houston 2085 stands as testament to reinvention. From oil capital to space capital. From petroleum extraction to cosmic exploration. From ground-based to galaxy-focused. 60 years. $32 billion federal dollars. $150 billion private investment. $200 billion total. 9.3 million residents, 137,000 space jobs, 87 billion annual space tourism revenue. From dying to thriving, from obsolete to essential, from earthbound to cosmic. Asterisk. The sprawling oil city that nearly drowned in its own floods became launching pad for humanity's cosmic expansion. Houston didn't conquer space. It enabled access to space. For tourists, for colonists, for explorers, for dreamers. The city that extracted Earth's resources now helps humanity reach beyond Earth. From taking from planet to reaching beyond planet. Philosophical transformation matching economic transformation. Houston's identity shift complete. Space City literally. Finally. Truly. This is Houston 2085. Where oil rigs became launch pads. Where petroleum engineers became rocket engineers. Where sprawling car city became space tourism capital. From fossil fuels to rocket fuel. From polluted air to clear skies. From boom-bust cycles to sustainable growth. Houston proved that cities facing obsolescence can transform, can pivot, can launch themselves toward different futures. Literally launching humans. Figuratively launching possibilities. From ground to galaxy. From decline to destiny. This has been Houston's cosmic transformation. From Space City nickname to Space City reality. 60 years. $200 billion. 9 million lives changed. Hundreds of thousands launched to orbit. Thousands to moon. Hundreds to Mars. The sprawling oil city became humanity's gateway to the cosmos. Houston didn't just transform itself. It transformed humanity's relationship with space. From impossible dream to routine vacation. From astronaut privilege to middle-class adventure. Houston made space accessible. And in doing so, made the impossible inevitable.